Bam, I am asleep. And this part I find very difficult to explain to people because they have a hard time conceptualizing how this would work. But I wake up and I'm inside of what you could imagine to be a very, very large hollow sphere. And I'm standing inside of the hollow of this sphere. And this sphere is actually the Earth, or what I assume to be the Earth. I have this intuitive understanding that somehow I'm inside the planet Earth, and that it's hollow inside, a completely empty space, and looking to the horizon or looking upward, you will see continents, landscapes, mountains, rivers, oceans, lakes, as far as your eye can see, just surrounding the interior of this globe. And it is a extremely just beautiful place, covered with just green everywhere, rainforests everywhere. Extremely vivid experience, not just visually, but I also remember sensations like the air on my skin, or the temperature, or the humidity. It was kind of humid. And at the center of this globe is sort of like a star. And it's a shining bluish teal star surrounded by mist, this massive cloud of mist. So some things I really, some impressions I got that stuck with me was just how incredibly clear and blue this water was. I mean, it looks exactly like what you would see in pictures of a tropical island or like the Caribbean. It's just pure, clear blue. Absolutely amazing. And this part's kind of embarrassing. I mean, but there was wildlife there that I was watching, and there were dinosaurs, right? And I mean, it wasn't the most interesting thing. It was just like, hey, there's a dinosaur, but it's basically just a brown lizard. It's exactly what you would probably imagine a dinosaur to look like. But I found that really interesting. And at the time I was having this dream, my state of mind, how do I explain this? It was sort of like there's a certain oceanic wonder that you sometimes will remember or recall you having from when you were a young kid that tends to go away when you get older. It's sort of like an excitement. And that's sort of the feeling that I had in this dream when I was witnessing my surroundings and where I was. And let's see, I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything there. No, I think I explained everything about that part. So things start to change. I'm not exactly sure how the scene changed. It just kind of went from one point to the other without any kind of transition, but I appear inside of this building. And it's this mansion, an extremely elaborate, ancient mansion made of entirely of this very dark, laminated kind of wood. And I'm in a hallway. And I begin walking down this hallway. And as I reach the end of the hallway, there is a room. And let me think about this. It's probably maybe 30 feet by, I'd say 15 feet. So it's sort of like a rectangular room. And at the far end of the room, there is a large set of windows which allow you to overlook the outside. And I noticed that this building it's still inside the earth, and you can still overlook the scenery from behind these windows. Above me in the same room, but on the opposite end of the windows, at the top of the room there is it's something like a very long mosaic up against the ceiling. And this was really interesting to me. It was a mosaic from left to right showing different wars that have occurred on the planet's surface. So like starting at the far left, there were primeval wars. And then as you move towards the right, these wars kind of like transition through periods of time until you reach the far end where I don't really remember what was at the very right, but I do remember seeing it transition into like World War I, World War II scenery kind of stuff. And definitely there was like Romanesque stuff. So there's that. Now, in this room as well, there is a very rectangular long table. It looks like just a meeting table. And there's chairs around it. And there are individuals sitting at the far left of the table and one individual sitting at the far right. The two individuals sitting at the far left appeared to be elderly gentlemen, quite, pretty old. Possibly, I would say maybe even in like their 70s, 80s. They looked like businessmen. They were wearing very fancy business attire. And one of the individuals stood up. He had very, I come from a Hungarian family, so I kind of am able to identify Hungarian traits. This individual had very, very Hungarian traits. He was, I would say, maybe like 5'6". He wasn't that tall, but very old. He walked up to me and shook my hand. He asked me for my name and asked me, "How did you get here?" And I told him my name, and I told him, "I don't know." And at this point, the individual at the far right of the table stood up, and I looked at him, and what was odd about this person was that he was wearing a very strange set of clothing. The closest thing in my mind that I can relate this to would be the garments worn by the Jewish high priests, or at least the Hebrew high priests. It looked exactly the same as that, but instead of being made of fabric, it was made entirely of a dark, thick leather, very dark brown. And if you look at pictures of the Hebrew high priest, he always has this kind of chest plate that he wears with these certain gems in it. And he also had this, but it was made of leather, and it was no gems, just the chest plate. This individual had, he was much younger than the other two, I would say in his late 30s, maybe even mid-30s, and had dark brown hair parted to the side, and a very striking facial features, a gaunt face, deep-set eyes, brown eyes, and he asked me if I was going to acknowledge him. I'm not exactly sure if he said it in those exact words, but the meaning of what he said was basically, "Are you going to acknowledge me?" And for some strange reason, I looked at him and I smiled. And I'm not really sure why I smiled. I just felt compelled to. And it was at this point that the dream ended.